No one in Millhaven ever talked about the house at the end of Sable Creek Road. That silence alone should have told me everything. I arrived on a Tuesday, the kind of Tuesday that feels like a Sunday. Gray, still, the air thick with the smell of rain that hasn't fallen yet. I had driven 4 hours from the city, following the inheritance lawyer's directions on a crumpled notepad, looking for a house my great-aunt Marin had left me in her will. A woman I had met exactly once, when I was 7 years old, and who had stared at me across a dinner table with eyes that were already somewhere else. The house sat at the end of a gravel lane so overgrown it was barely a suggestion. Tall, narrow, a Victorian skeleton, all dark wood and angular roof lines, with windows that caught the light wrong, not reflecting the gray sky above, but something deeper, something interior, as if the house were lit from the inside. I told myself it was the clouds. The key the lawyer gave me was old iron, heavy in my palm. It turned in the lock with a sound like a held breath releasing. The door opened before I finished turning it. Inside smelled of cedar and old paper, and something underneath both of those things. Something mineral, like wet stone, like a cave. The entrance hall was long and dark, the wallpaper a deep burgundy with a repeating pattern I couldn't quite resolve in the low light. Vines, maybe, or hands. I switched on my phone torch and walked slowly, my footsteps absorbed by the thick Persian rug underfoot, which muffled everything, which made the house feel like a held pause between two sounds. The first room off the hall was the parlor, a fireplace, cold, a wingback chair angled toward it, its upholstery cracked and pale, a writing desk beneath the window, papers still spread across it, as though Marin had stepped away moments ago. I did not touch the papers yet. I don't know why. Something in the arrangement felt deliberate, arranged for someone, for me. That first night, I slept in the upstairs bedroom, in a bed that was too large for one person and too cold despite the July heat outside. I had opened the window before lying down. By midnight, I wished I hadn't. The sounds started around 11:30. A low, rhythmic creak from the floorboards directly below me, the parlor, where I had left the desk, the chair, the papers. A sound like footsteps, slow, deliberate, back and forth across the same short stretch of floor. I lay perfectly still and counted. 12 paces, a pause, 12 paces back. I told myself old houses settle. I told myself it was the wind moving something loose downstairs, a shutter or a pipe. I told myself this until the creak stopped, and then I heard something worse than the creak. I heard breathing, slow and close, just below the level of the mattress, coming from the floor beside the bed. I did not look down for a very long time. Morning arrived like a mercy. I came downstairs with the daylight still blue and new, and made coffee on the old gas range and stood in the kitchen doorway looking at the parlor. The papers on the desk had been moved, stacked, neatly, into a single pile, the top sheet turned face down. I crossed the room. I turned the sheet over. It was a letter, in Marin's handwriting. I had seen the lawyer's comparison copy. Thin and slanting to the right, like text leaning into a wind. It read, "If you are reading this, then you slept here at least one night, and it has already begun to learn you. This is not a warning. Warnings imply you have a choice. This is simply an explanation, for whatever comfort an explanation provides. The house is old. Before it was a house, it was a place. Before it was a place, it was an idea. It has held many people inside it, and it has kept something of each of them. Impressions, you might call them, memories in the walls. They are not cruel, they are only very old and very lonely, and when someone new arrives, they reach. They reach the way the blind reach, urgently, without apology. Learn to let them. That is the only way. Your loving great-aunt, Marin." I read the letter 3 times, then I looked up at the wallpaper at the repeating pattern I still couldn't fully see. It was not vines. By the 3rd day, I had stopped trying to explain the sounds. The footsteps in the parlor were regular as clockwork, always beginning at 11:30, always 12 paces, always that pause. The breathing by the bed I had accepted the way you accept weather, not comfortably, but as a fact. What I had not accepted, what I still could not frame into something manageable, were the mirrors. The house had 7 mirrors. I had counted them on my first walkthrough. On the morning of the 3rd day, there were 9. The 2 new ones were in the upstairs corridor, tall, oval, in frames of black painted wood, and they had not been there before. I was certain of it with the certainty of someone who has been watching very carefully for exactly this kind of thing. I stood before the nearer one. My reflection looked back at me. And then, for just a fraction of a second, the kind of interval that your mind might persuade you to discount, my reflection smiled before I did. I stepped back. It smiled again. Marin's letter had said they were lonely. What I hadn't understood then, what I began to understand by the end of the first week, was that lonely things have proposals. The house did not want to haunt me, it wanted to keep me. I felt it in the way the rooms began to accommodate themselves to my habits. The parlor chair, each morning, was turned to catch the exact angle of light I preferred to read in. The kitchen range lit more easily each day, as if something were learning its moods. The temperature of the upstairs bedroom, so cold that first night, had adjusted to something precise and comfortable. The house was becoming mine. Or I was becoming the house's. The line, I was beginning to understand, is thinner than you think. On the 7th morning, I found a new paper on the desk. Not in Marin's handwriting, in my own. I had not written it. It said, "Stay." I packed a bag that afternoon. Not everything, just what I had brought in. I moved carefully through each room, not running, keeping my breath even, because something told me that panic would be the wrong register, that the house would respond to panic differently than to calm. At the front door, my hand on the old iron handle, I paused. From the parlor, the 12-pace creak began. 11:30 was hours away still, but it had started anyway, and I understood that it was not a warning this time. It was a plea. I thought of Marin, of her eyes already somewhere else across that dinner table when I was 7. Not vacant, I understood now. Elsewhere. Still in some essential way in this house. Still learning it. Still learned by it. I turned the handle. I pushed the door. The house let me go, or it seemed to, and as I stepped into the gray afternoon light, the door swinging shut behind me with that sound of breath releasing, I checked my coat pocket for my car keys, and found instead a single iron key. Old, heavy in my palm, exactly like the one the lawyer had given me. I did not look back at the house, but I knew, the way you know certain things, that if I had turned and looked at those windows that caught the light wrong, I would have seen myself still inside, smiling.